Hello and welcome to a new tournament recap on my channel. Today we are looking into the CCS 10K Lorcana Tournament. I think those big events give us a really good glimpse of the meta and the decks that will be played at future challenges. For example, Birmingham and so on. So let's start with the first deck. So the first deck I have on my list is the Steel Amethyst deck by Eric Patch, top 16. As you can see, it's a bit like my deck list that I play with, except of the Elsa and the Tinkerbell that is playing here, and the Cogsworth, of course. Really good idea, I think. I'm also like testing the Elsa and the Tinkerbell at the moment, and I really think this deck has some good potential against those S tier decks, as for example the Steelsong deck, which will have some issues with the Pete if they don't have any characters on the play or don't have any characters in their hand. I would cut the Maleficent maybe for some other cards, for example for 4th Castle, or maybe even 3rd Strength of a Raging Fire. Maybe you could also consider to play Baboon instead of the Strength of a Raging Fire, or even the Cannons. But I think it's a solid list. Congrats on making to top 16. And yeah, the next deck in our list is Emerald Amethyst by Corey Anderson, top 8. I think it's a really cool list. I just asked myself why is just playing like 6 1-drops. Maybe you should like play 8 at least. I think that's a good idea. That's a good amount of 1-drops, especially for a deck that like has some tempo in it. As you can see, more and more people are playing the Emerald Chromicon, a really good item. During your opponent's turn, whenever one of your characters is banished, you may return chosen character to the player's hand. So this means you can also bounce your own characters. For example, the goat, the rabbit. You can bounce any card of yourself if another card gets destroyed. Of course, you have the Lyle, which is keeping those hyper aggro decks a bit low in this deck. And yeah, you play the Clarabelle. You try to shift her on the 1-drop, and I think it's a really solid list. You could consider playing like maybe a few more Kid Cloud Clickers and kick the Mother Gothel out of this deck, the 6-drop, because I don't think it's really strong. Because when you play this character, each opponent chooses one of the characters and return that card to their hand. So most of the times the opponent has a choice of which card is getting back to their hand, which is obviously not good if you play against Amethyst or against Red. So still pretty cool list. I like the Rafikis that are getting played here. Maybe you could also play, or if you play the Rafiki, you could remove the Merlin, for example, and play some of those one-offs a few more times, especially the Kid Cloud Kicker here. I see him like, you could play him especially 4 times maybe. And yeah, but pretty cool list. And yeah, next up we have Sapphire Steel by Jonathan Lamb. Pretty straightforward list. Plays 4 Captain Hooks, 2 Fire Cannons, 4 Smees, 2 Arcs. Everything for that hyper aggro matchup or against fast decks that like getting some lore in the early game. He's trying to slow them down probably with some of those cards. I'm personally missing the Tippo because I think Tippo is one of the best cards in blue. Yeah, he also played the Cusco for 6, which is an amazing card to remove locations, for example. 2 Petes, I think that's a valid choice because you don't really need Pete in blue steel in every matchup. You just need it like a few times maybe. And as you can see, also plays 3 Beasts, 3 Grab Your Swords, 1 Ariel, 2 Let It Go, 1 Kronk, which is like really new to me. Effect is during your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may deal 2 damage to chosen character. I don't think this is a good card. Maybe you could play like, yeah, at least the Tipo instead of him. You could also remove the Ariel or the Jempo. But I think like Tipo is a really important card. Also playing just 6 of the 8 possible items you can play with Fortis Fair and Popsicle is really questionable for me. But I think all in all it's a pretty solid list. Especially with the Cogsworth on the field, you have like your opponent will have a ton of problems with it because you will not be able to remove the opponent's characters, except of course with like some mass removal, how be prepared and so on. But all in all, really cool list, and yeah. Next up in our deck we have like a quick Ruby Amethyst bounce deck. Probably going just really fast with that lore, with that Minnie Mouse, with that Olaf. You're dropping those 1-drops on the field. Of course, Flynn Rider to gain that extra lore, especially against hyper aggro, because most of those characters have like one attack. Pretty straightforward list. Placed 3 Be Prepared, 3 Madame Medusas, 3 Lady Tremaines, which is pretty much, but considering that you have so many inkables in your deck, you can play that amount of uninkables for the late game, especially if you don't go to over 7 ink. Of course you play the Maui. I think it's still a really strong card, especially for those locations. Those locations are being forgotten by some people, and I had also some games where I just like played the Queen's Castle and I was able to secure my win for that because they didn't have any removal for it. I see the bounce package pretty obvious, but playing like 3 Lady Tremaines, 3 Madame Medusas and 3 King Undisputed is pretty much. Like you're playing 9 removals in this deck. You play the small Sisu, you don't play the big Sisu, which I can see. And yeah, basically you just play the whole bounce package with the Madame Mim Fox, with the Madame Mim Snake, with the Crab, with the Goat and with the Rabbit. You could also consider playing the Elsa and the 8-cost Elsa to shift it on the 5 ink Elsa, but I don't think this is like a great play because you're just like giving away one of your 5 costs characters for a shift option, which I don't think is a good idea. But all in all, I can see this deck being like very late game friendly for yourself, but you can also have like a really aggressive start with those Minnie Mouse, with this Olaf, if your opponent doesn't have any answers for them. So all in all, a great list, and congrats on top 4. Next up we have also a Ruby Amethyst deck, a little bit different. You play the Chunderbox Followers instead and the Magic Rooms instead of the Olaf and the Minnie Mouse. You also play the Sisu Shift option and you play 4 Be Prepared, which is pretty good. You play 3 Madame Medusas. You don't play any King Undisputed, but you play the Brawl, which is missing in the other deck. Of course, 4 Queen's Castles, 2 Libraries. Pretty straightforward, especially with those Churnabox and with the Magic Rooms. And with the library, you have a really good card draw at the beginning of the game. You play the bounce package, you just play 2 crabs. I think that's okay. You don't need more of those crabs in this kind of deck. You are pretty secure against hyper aggro with the crab and with the Madame Mim Fox. And yeah, for those lemon lime decks, you have the Sisu, which is just removing, I think, everything of those lemon lime decks. And yeah, congrats on the 3rd place. Next up we have red blue, and I think that's a really cool list. Playing 4 Popsicles, of course, playing 3 Vitalis Spheres. Really cool card, especially against those aggressive decks. You play the Chica, you play Tipo together, really good. Especially if you have Chica on the first, and then you play the Tipo and Next turn you can also sing one jump ahead. I think a really underrated card in blue at the moment is Vision of the Future, where you look at the top 5 cards of your deck and you put one in your hand and the rest on the bottom of your deck. What's really interesting here is that he's playing 3 Scars, which is really good against hyper aggro, but I don't think it's necessary. He's playing 4 Fishbone Quills. Maybe you could, like, for the Skark, you could for example, like maximize the numbers of Vital Spheres, Chica, and the 1 jumps ahead. But I think it's a pretty solid list. I don't know if you need 3 Mufasas, I think 2 are enough. But yeah, 4 Tamatoas and 4 Maleficents is also a great answer. And congrats on the 2nd place, really looks great to me. And I think this will be like, this is how our deck at Birmingham will look like if it gets to the top cut there. Last but not least, we have the Steelsong deck by Brandy Candio. 1st place. Played that deck a few times in the past. Always won the 10k tournaments with it, and it's still a really strong deck. I saw some of his tweets. He told his followers that, like, Prince Naveen, for example, is a card you should play 4 times and not just 2 times. Rapunzel is like a really good card, especially because of the drawing, especially because she's like a 1/5 character, which is questing for 2, which is like hard to get removed. Of course, the Cinderella with the shift, really cool. And with the Smee and the Piglet, you have like also some synergy with the pirates here, which is pretty interesting, because some people don't know this, but Piglet is also a pirate and a captain, so your Smee doesn't lose like one damage at the end of your turn. As we can see, it also plays the lanterns, because he just wants to get his characters out as fast as possible. I can also see the Pete being really strong in those mirror matches. And of course, with a whole new world, you just like, if you manage to get that Ariel in turn 3 and just remove his hand with a whole new world, or with Prince Naveen, it's really great answer for your future turns, because you just have that sync characters that like are destroying everything which is coming on the field from the opponent. So yeah, congrats on being 1st, Candio, and thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below, and I see you guys soon. Bye.